Hello, it's 3, 2, 1, and we are on for yet another exciting episode of Eventful Bytes. Good afternoon, everyone, and of course, good day, because today we have got international speakers also joining us right from Europe, Hungary, right? And welcome to all the audience as well. And with the, you can say, different kind of weather which all of us are experiencing. It's hot, humid, monsoon, and I hope everyone is joining it with their preferred beverage. Trust me, it's pretty hot out here. And of course, the session which we are have today is going to be sizzling hot as well because it's on ABM. And I'm sure the excitement which I have for this particular subject, each of my panelists and the audience, they share a similar excitement as well. Today, this event is brought to you in collaboration with the Jio Coupons and JioEvents because, of course, the topic is that importance of loyalty and rewards program when you are defining and designing your ABM strategy. ABM, account-based marketing, ABX, you name it, in the heart, it's all about accounts, right? Okay, so in today's panel discussion, what we are going to cover is that, how B2B the buying process is getting complex day by day, and then does the concept of loyalty still holds true, and then how we can have a data driven approach. So let's dive in straight to this particular subject. Ajay, my first question is going to be for you, and then of course we'll hear from Ajay that in which part of the business he is in. Some interesting insights are going to come from his end. Does the concept of loyalty hold true in today's age, Ajay? It's a very, you can say, a dicey subject, right? But I'm going to be leaving the entire floor to you, Ajay.
So this is one of those how long is a piece of string kind of questions, right? So it depends on what you mean by loyalty, right? So let's take a moment and understand what we mean by a loyalty program. Most people understand it to mean I give you a card, you earn some points, and then you go and redeem it for a broken toaster, right? If you get lucky. And most of the time, the points just expire. You get spammed mercilessly by SMS messages and WhatsApp messages and email messages saying you must learn more about our beloved brand because you put up your hand and said you want to be loyal to us, right? Now, if you understand loyalty that way, it's been dead a long time. I think customers are far less patient now than they ever were. If, on the other hand, you decide that a loyalty program is a marketing tool in the hands of salespeople in a B2B context, then I think, no, it's not dead at all, right? What a loyalty program gives you is 5 assets: data, a comm channel, which if you treat with respect can be very profitable for you and you don't have to pay Facebook and Google to use it, it's yours. It gives you an ability to create some kind of emotional bond with your customers through recognition, through making them feel special. It gives you the ability to create a currency other than a dollar or a rupee, depending on which geography you're in. Dan, I'm not sure what the currency is in Hungary. I'm afraid I've never been, but I'm pretty sure it's as hard as anywhere else, right? And out of that currency, it gives you an opportunity to give away goodies which are meaningful to the person involved, right? And the fifth thing, and the most important, perhaps, is the ability to create partnerships where there's a bunch of people who want to talk to the people that you want to talk to. You've got a channel which people love and respect. You've got a currency which people value. You've got an emotional connect which people are bonding to. Has that kind of loyalty died? No. Will it ever die? No. I think as long as humans remain human, right, we will continue to care. And as long as I can make you care, right, and that's fundamental, using these 5 assets which I've created with the program, I don't think it's going to die. Sorry, long answer. The quick answer would have been said no, but I thought it's better to give you a little bit of explanation because it takes a little bit of more understanding before you jump into the answer. Yeah. Sorry, this is after 35 years in loyalty. I know Shika is supposed to introduce myself, but let's put it this way. I've been doing loyalty since 86, 87, data-driven marketing, CRM, done it at the Tata Group level. I've done it in individual companies. And right now, a bit along with the tooth, but doing yet another startup. So that's me. Back to you,
Yeah,
Shikha.
thank you, Ajay, for putting the context right in the start. So that's why I said that let's have you opening up the floor for this particular concept. And you hit the five pillars really right. You talked about data, you talked about account channel, you talked about bonding, and then of course the fourth most important one, the currency. In a smarter way, how we are understanding that, and then and again the partnerships as well. Now, picking up the data part here, Ajay. So, my second question will be to you, Karthik. That when we are talking about the data, and when we talk about the data-driven approach to create the movements for your prospects, wherein Ajay was just talking about the bonding, the bonding which we create, how we are forging the relationships out there. How powerful is this, and what are the tools you use to implement it for your clients? And then, of course, we all would love to know that what exactly you are doing in the ABM space and how you are creating ripples out there.
So I've been in the ABM space. Karthik here, of course. I run a company called SaaS Marketing. I basically help B2B funded SaaS companies go to market. So I basically started about 4 years back as a head of ABM for a $100 million company called Kissflow. It's a India-based, Chennai-based company, workflow automation. So the problem, I mean, the ABM right now is completely different from what ABM was like 4 or 5 years back, right? There's a lot of platforms right now, a lot of tools to understand, like do display, account based, IP based, right? There's a lot of tools out there. So when I started, the first thing to identify in ABM is to identify accounts, right? So I'll probably reverse it, right? So every marketing channel is data driven, but then when it comes to ABM, it's not data driven, right? It's completely the opposite. So you in a B2B space, when you're selling a larger deal like $50,000, $100,000, you pick a set of accounts that you want to go behind. There's no data behind it, right? It's just that ICP, you pick an ICP. If it's a vertical SaaS, you pick like top 50 companies, 100 companies. If it's an horizontal SaaS, you kind of pick up like in each industry you pick up like 100 companies and go behind it, right? So it starts from there, right? So identifying the right set of ICP accounts and then orchestrating your like campaigns based on where your prospects are. In a typical scenario, some of your prospects may be in LinkedIn, some of them are searching on Google, right? And some of them not very active on each of these places, right? They're probably good with talking, right? For example, in a particular scenario, we do a lot of roundtable. In another scenario, we do podcasts, right? So you pick an account, you identify a set of contacts in those accounts, and you try to engage and then try to sell to that particular account, at least like get stakeholders engaged in like at least 6 or 7 people in a single account. That's practically what you call ABM, ABX or whatever, right? So when you reach out, do outreach, like do personalized and stuff, right, which is typically an ABS strategy. But then when you do a like marketing driven, make people come to a website, fill a form, right, and then that is pretty typically an ABM marketing side of it, right? When it comes to now in terms of, so you start and then you figure out data, right? So in terms of engagement, just typically you have intent based engagement. You figure out which are the companies that are actively searching for a very specific term. Let's say you're selling a martech platform, right? You search intent. Tools like Bombara, ZoomInfo, and demand base, some of these tools give you intent, right, including G2, right? So you pick up those intent and then say that, okay, these are the accounts that is actively looking for a services that I'm offering or a solution that I'm offering or a product that I'm offering, and then go behind those set of companies. And the other way is to choose those 100 accounts and then go behind them, right? So these are two different things, right? So the platforms typically starts with intent and then the other way, right? Then you run set of experiments with them and then take the data and then figure out, right? So it's the other way. So when you run a marketing channel, when you run a campaign in a typical marketing channel, you have existing data and then you have past data, historical data. So you take the data and then kind of design your campaign based on the past data, right? But when it comes to ABM at the start, you don't have enough data because it's completely new set of accounts. You've never done a larger deal like $50,000, $100,000 deal, right? So which is practically means that every company that I worked with, at some stage they want to crack larger deals, but then a lot of the SaaS companies initially go with SMBs and mid-market, right? There's not a lot of ABM involved. But then when it comes to bigger deals, so you pick a set of accounts and then do campaigns, do logical campaigns. Think about, okay, these are the 5 things I have to do. in order to engage with the prospect, right? Uh, when you have an outbound team, so that typically like they follow up and then do emails, calls, and stuff, right? But when it comes to marketing, you do typically one-on-one, one to few, one to many, right? And then you have to orchestrate each of those campaigns based on what you want to do, right? You want to do one-on-one, you have to figure out one-on-one strategy, right? Like what is the end objective? You want to bring a prospect to a podcast and then give them enough information so that they'll eventually buy from you, right? Or maybe bring 10 people on a round table, which is probably one to few. And then one to many is typically doing display, like, there are tools like Rollworks and there are tools like Sixth Sense, right? Which, you upload a set of accounts, they'll do all the ads, they'll do initially display, they'll do all of those ads, then like move them further down the funnel, right? Figure out a middle of the funnel strategy, then like if there's, how aware they are in terms of category, right? So these are typically some of those tools like I've used in the past. But when I started out at Kistlo, I didn't have enough budget to buy a tool. Like typical ABM tool will cost you $50,000, $100,000, right? So basically, I orchestrated in a way that I don't have to spend a lot of money, but I'm spending money. I typically spend money on corporate gifting. Like there are tools like Sendosa, Postal.io, where you can actually choose gifts like you can send to a prospect, right? So a high engaging prospect, I typically have a place where I will send them a gift, right? And then engage with them. But before that, I'll do a set of activities like LinkedIn emails and a combination of personalized messages. I do a little bit of LinkedIn ads and stuff, right? So which is what I did. I mean, not spend a lot of money, but then experiment. But then that experiment also probably involved with referral campaigns and getting references from existing customers who has bought from Africa or like Europe to get a reference from the US, right? Because typically you have to figure out. I mean, you just have to think about how to do that and then like orchestrate based on how to engage with a particular account, right? That answers your
Yes,
question.
Karthik, and I'm so again, glad that of course all my panelists are of course AVM thought leaders, and then they are of course one step ahead of me when when I'm ahead of me when I have my bullets in front of me, my talking points. So of course, my one of my bullet was of course wherein I wanted to talk about Reach Desk, I wanted to talk about Alice, I wanted to talk about Sendoso. So you brought in that point, but I think there is one hidden thing, Karthik, which you just mentioned that each of the marketers they really need to become like an S marketer, right? Because Ajay, when you were talking about the accounts, the account engagement, I think a long time back, one of the CMO they had mentioned that it's only us marketers who are getting warmed up with the concept of accounts, right? Sales had always talked about accounts. They were always talking about in the language of accounts. They never talked about like, okay, this is my lead. This is how many leads I have. No, this is a set of accounts which I deal with. So of course, it was a long way for all the marketers like us, but then I think it's a good and a gradual transition because ultimately it's not only about sales or marketing, but I think each one of us is becoming an S marketer in totality. But yeah, Karthik, I'll come back to you on the point wherein you talked about on how to get strategic when you are doing the personalization aspect with, of course, bringing in the accounts, but then and also utilizing all these amazing platforms which we have out there, which are making, of course, our life easy, but definitely in quotes, it comes with a budget. So, yep, moving on to Dan now. So, of course, Dan, there is no denying fact that B2B buying process is becoming very complex. It is becoming day by day. And then again, you all are, veterans into the industry. You almost spent more than a decade or so in this entire B2B sales and marketing journey as well. So, how do you see this present state, Dan, that are there any ground rules which still holds true when we are talking about B2B marketing journey? And then, of course, I know you, the panelists know you, but of course, it will help our audience to know you and then what exactly the path-breaking work you are doing in your particular.
Yeah, so thank you, Shika. Hello, everyone. My name is Dan, and with my little company, we help technology companies go to market, technology companies with complex sales cycles. And because of that nature, at the end of the day, a lot of it is going to end up being account-based marketing. So a lot of the go-to-market sequences end up being account-based marketing. And yeah, to your question, Shika. So how has the B2B buyer journey changed? Now, on the one hand, it's become more complex, as you said, and it's easy to talk about, all the complexities and everything else. But on the other hand, fundamental things have not changed. And I just want to refer back to the question that you were asking AJ and what he started talking about with loyalty. There are some fundamental human needs, desires, and behaviors which have not changed. So we have to keep that in mind. So what is changing is some of the organizational peculiarities at B2B companies and some of the processes. And obviously, a lot of the tactics and strategies by which decisions are made and how companies are trying to go to market. So on the tactical level, everything is changing. But some fundamental human behaviors are not, such as really trust. People will buy from those who they know, like, and trust. So on a fundamental level, if you can get these three things, if you can get not one person, but the majority or the entire buying committee to be aware of you, so to know you, to like you and your organization as a person, as a business entity, and probably most important, to trust you. So if you build up the expertise, if you are building trust by being empathetic about understanding their needs. So if you can display that you understand their needs probably better than they themselves can articulate it, then you will build up trust. So if you build up know, like, and trust with the entire buying committee, I think that's going to be a winning strategy, so to say, forever. And it has been as well. Now, you said, of course, the buying journey is getting more complex. And on the one hand, before we go into the complexity, I just want to address something that feels complex, but is actually change, okay? And what am I talking about? In particular, you're seeing decision makers coming out of Generation Y and Generation Z. And their media consumption and their information consumption habits are drastically different from the previous generations. So what that actually means is that they are not dependent on one-to-one conversations to get vital information. Because what happened in the 1980s, if your company wanted to buy a photocopy machine, then the only way you could obtain the necessary information was to talk to a sales representative from Xerox or whatever company was selling the stuff. And so you couldn't go on the internet, you couldn't go in communities. You might have been able to call up like 3 people if you knew that they specifically were, I don't know, they have installed photocopy machines at their office. But typically you'd be dependent on the salesperson to give you information. Now, a lot of companies, especially maturing B2B companies, still operate that way. So when you look at and Kartik, I don't know what your experience is with the companies you work with, but if you look at a typical B2B technology startup, if you look at the roster of people, who are you going to see? You're going to see like 9 salespeople, call them biz dev, call them account executives, whatever. And you're going to see like 0 to 1 marketer. And this acknowledges, this setup does not acknowledge the fact that what's happening is that buyers want to consume information in radically different ways. Communities, social media, live events such as this one, you name it, and a lot of other things. So this feels like it's complex because it's a new change that, you have to change your way of doing things from the way you did it in 1986. Yeah, and at the same time, what holds true is that, yes, buying committees are getting larger. So especially if you're selling into enterprise, you have numbers coming out of Gartner and Forrester saying that the average buying committee size went from 9 people to 12 people throughout the past 6 or 7 years. So that obviously makes things more complex. Buyers have a lot more information, so the decision-making process, they're screwing around a lot more, trying to figure out the nuts and bolts because they have so many options, they have so much information, so they're, in the trenches doing that more. So that makes your job as a buyer harder. As a seller harder. And it makes the buying harder as well. So all these factors contribute to complexity as well. But I'm going to shut up now because you all have so many other great things to say.
No. I think, again, a good nugget which you had shared, Dan, when you are talking about that these days the decision makers are from Gen Z and Gen Y, and then how they are consuming the information or how they are doing the research I would not say drastically different, but of course they have their own ways on consuming the information and then coming to that particular decision that yes, I want to go with product A or want to go with product B. And then if I'm going to tie and back the loyalty and reward program, they are also very smart in picking up that, okay, this is like that very subtle way of approaching me, or this is something which has become a more genuine approach from that particular buyer, wherein they are actually understanding the need. I think the path is very difficult, and then of course all of us, all the marketers, they are actually treading that very thin line. But yeah, I think whoever cracks the code, they get the deal, right? Okay, yep. So we'll come back to those points, Dan, Ajay, and Karthik in the round two. So now going to Sunesh. So ABM or ABX. Now, with your experience, Sunesh, you being the fractional CMO, you are dealing with so many, you can say, different set of companies and different set of whether they are influencers or decision makers day in and day out. What are the trends which you are seeing with your clients? Are they keen to bring in the element of personalized gifting in quotes? And are they ready to invest in the right solution, which doesn't work in silos, but well integrated with MarTech stack? Because I think that's also one of the fundamental issue wherein probably a client says that, yes, I really want to bring up the personalized gifting, but is it integrated? Because in the end, of course, everybody is going to burn their hands if the entire platform is not integrated and we're not getting the customer insight. So over to you, Sunesh. Okay, Sunesh, we are not able to hear you. No. Okay. Okay, can you unmute yourself? I will just check with the audio. No. Okay. You want to check your mic settings? It was working fine. Probably you want to log out and log in again, Sunesh? Yeah. Sunesh, if you can log in and you can log out and log in again, and then I think it should be working. Probably some network issue. Yep. No worries. So while Sunesh is coming back and joining us back at the panel, so Karthik, I would really like to pick up that point wherein you were talking about, Reach Desk or Sendoso. So Sunesh, so probably we'll take a pause. Sunesh, you're back.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great.
Okay.
That's great. Okay, so coming to your question, a brief introduction about myself. So I work as a virtual CMO and a marketing consultant for primarily enterprise B2B SaaS companies. In a similar, I guess, space as what Karthik is working on. And I do resonate with a lot of points which Karthik made also earlier. In fact, I had a very interesting conversation with somebody from Terminus, a US, everybody knows Terminus. So here, Terminus is one of the most commonly used ABM platforms globally. And, he said that he candidly told me that they're, 90% of the people they're catering to, it's still in the early stages of ABM. Okay, not many are matured enough to kind of utilize the platform to its fullest. So if that's the case with global, customers, India is still to kind of, warm up to this thing. I mean, there will definitely be a few enterprise companies using ABM, but I think for a lot of companies, it's still, kind of something which is not caught up completely. They want to try it, test it out, but definitely not in the purest form. So, for example, when I started these things, I mean, in a perfect world, I would have wanted to do one-to-one ABM, wherein I have all the information about a particular prospect and create content specific to that particular prospect, that company, which can cater to different personas in that company. But what is working right now, and maybe Karthik can also probably agree with me, is a lot of it's somewhere between one to few and one to many ABM, wherein I'm running campaigns around, let's say, a particular set of companies which will have a similar challenge which can be addressed by my client's product, or it could be an industry where we want to kind of do a campaign around and get some warmed up accounts over there. However, in its purest sense, because of a lot of reasons, we typically don't, and especially more so with early stage companies, because they don't really have that kind of mature information about clients. So where we are right now, we are using platforms like LinkedIn and email in its purest form to kind of look at how we can engage with our target accounts. And I think the first thing which starts off with is defining your ICP well, because what we try and do is we try to get our ICP right from understanding which companies once they've achieved product market fit, which companies have they got traction with most, what kind of companies, and then we look at building up an audience which is resonating with the characteristics of their existing customers. So that is where and more I'm talking about the most profitable customers, and that's where we kind of focus all our energies on. Just earlier in the morning, I was just taking a stock of some of the campaigns which I'm doing, and we are happy that so one of my clients is an enterprise fintech company, and they target primarily banks and financial services companies and NBFCs, and very specific designations of those companies. So we were looking at statistics from a LinkedIn campaign, and we were happy to find that there's at least resonating from that. So now again, while platforms like Sendoso, Reachdesk and all offer a valuable proposition, but mostly so in India, the economics may not work in their favor because it's quite pricey. So in fact, as such, ABM platforms in general are pricey, which even Karthik also mentioned. So I think what we have to do is, I think in the maturity cycle, I think we are still in the early stages. And as we move forward, maybe, or maybe for that matter, Jio, if it's planning to come up with something in this space and make it more conducive for startups, maybe that can be a great avenue as well. So broadly, this is where my experience is right now.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Karthik, you have some kind of insights on which Sunesh just mentioned about the maturity of ABM with respect to Indian ecosystem, and wherein how you can say the clients are warming up to the concept of bringing in the personalized angle. And then I'll move to Dan, that how does the situation compare from this particular region to his region or the clients which he is.
Yeah, so I agree with Sunesh. The maturity in terms of marketing maturity that Indian companies, as compared to Western countries like US, right, is a huge difference, and we are actually catching up, right? And then we are very close to catching up. I've seen a lot of difference like 3-4 years back, but then there's not a lot of difference right now. But then when it comes to ABM, everybody wants to do ABM. It's become a very fancy term, right, for people, and they think that okay, the only way to do ABM is to buy an expensive platform and then do display, spend a $10,000 media budget on like one to many, and then do display, and then eventually figure out okay, display will eventually bring leads, right? That's not how you do, right? And that's a medium. There's just a one form of engaging with the prospect. Yes, there's a lack of maturity and understanding. So the first, I've a lot of the times I've failed, but then I succeeded my first time. But then after that, there was a lot of failures because when I did ABM as a whole, no, I took care of end to end. Okay, so I also did a lot of, my team did discovery, I did demos like end to end, like did follow ups and everything, right? So there was a separate sales team, but then I took the responsibility of doing end to end because I want to make this work, right? And when that happened, it was a fairly successful model because to do ABM, it has to be from sales. Sales has to pick a set of accounts and come to marketing and say, okay, I want to run campaigns from these accounts, right? Or probably it's a very strategic decision, right? Sales doesn't have to do it, but then a CEO has to pick up 100 accounts, 200 accounts and say that a marketing sales work together and bring me pipeline and then eventually revenue from these 100, 200 accounts, right? Let's say pick 200 accounts and say that I want 10% conversion from those 200 accounts, right? Probably in a year, maybe in a couple of years, I want 20 accounts or 110 accounts or whatever, right? So you need one sales buy-in. Number two, you need inside sales like SDR function or BDR, SDR, whatever you call that, right? That they have to also be aligned, and then eventually demand gen has to be aligned because everything, the campaign, everything has to revolve around where sales can close deals, right? Sales can close deals from that particular account, right? So that level of maturity is never there, right? Especially with us, especially in Indian SaaS ecosystem or whatever I'm part of, people are too focused on leads. Like, I want 100 MQs, I want 200 MQs, 300 MQs, right? Nobody has a patience to sit and then mine accounts and do a proper ABM strategy. And a lot of them think that ABM strategy is also buying a very expensive platform and running ads. Like, that's not the case, right? I've done ABM with initially when I started, I bought Seamless.io, and then there's another data tool to basically identify. Then my ICP accounts I picked up by internal. Like, I had a set of, I mean, it's an industry agnostic product, okay, workflow automation, right? So I basically said, okay, I'll only pick up 4 or 5 industries that is on top, because there were like 100 industries they were catering to. And so I said, okay, give me those 5 industries where that gives you the maximum revenue, because I have a better use case there. And then I also said, okay, give me a bigger accounts, Fortune 1000 accounts or Fortune 2000 accounts, where we have sold in one region, but then, okay, is there a possibility to sell in other region, which is a bigger region, right? That also included in a part of like my strategies, right? So I did 2 of that, and it didn't cost me anything because it was all experimental, right? Like, basically for an existing account, for a bigger account, I went to that person who's already using and then asked for a reference, right? I just went behind them, with the help of CS and support, right? Initially helped them out, and eventually asked for a referral, right? Their colleagues know, they'll definitely have some kind of a reference there. At least give me internal information of who to talk to, which region to speak to, or who's the right person in that region, and all of that, right? And that didn't cost me anything, right? The one that it costed me, because the ones that I picked up, larger accounts, I had a better use case, I had better customer testimonials, I had better case studies. And then I said, okay, listen, I mean, I work with top 5 in your industry, right? So then figured a campaign to do that. And then I said, okay, I'll only focus on these 3 or 4 channels and then do stuff. And those channels didn't cost me a lot. Like, one is an email channel, the other one is a LinkedIn channel. LinkedIn emails doesn't cost you a lot of money. And the other one is like a typical direct mailer. So I said, okay, whoever is not responding, I'll write a personalized note and send it across. And then especially in the US now, I had a company called T-Box. So I sent a very customized tea gifts to folks, right? To just let them know that, hey, I'm there. And then eventually, you can't sell when you're sending a gift, right? You are just have to remind them that, okay, I value you, and then this is not a bribe. Also, there's a very thin line between sending gifts, like, which sounds like a bribe, versus something which is not as a bribe, right? So it's a very thin line. So you have to understand that, right? So it didn't cost me a lot of money. As some places I had a budget of $100, and then some places $50 and stuff, right? A typical SQL will cost you $1,000, $2,000, like in a very SaaS scenario. $50 budget, $100 budget is not going to cost you a lot, right? So once you figure that out, and then you can figure out the one to many or one to few campaigns really well, right? But then initially it's all about experimenting and figuring out, like I said, very important thing is to get a alignment, right? Marketing, inside sales, which is SDR function or BDR function, and then the E's, right? So all 3 has to be aligned. And then all of these accounts has to be from the top, from the CEO's office, and then said, hey, passed on, and then marketing will sit, and then A's will sit. They'll design like multiple strategies, and then A's will say, hey, my prospects are available in these places, right? Can you run a campaign only on these places, or let's say these channels? And then like the marketing will run campaigns, and then eventually SDRs, BDRs will follow up, right? Because you're not capturing demand, you're creating demand, right? So which means there's a lot of follow-ups needed when you're creating demand. And then, like I said, when you're trying to get multiple people from the same account, you also have to think about how to not sell eventually, just provide value, and then show that, hey, this is a company, this is a product has a lot of value. So I agree. I mean, like Sonesh said, there's not a lot of maturity, marketing maturity right now in Indian SaaS ecosystem when it comes to ABM. But then, like, it's actually coming up. Like, people are, thinking about how to, not spend a lot of money on platforms, right? But I know a lot of companies use platforms to do really good ABM as well, right? They're a little matured, right? So I agree. I mean, I agree with Sonesh, right? I think I probably think this is like another 1 or 2 years away from all of this, right? India is like a huge market, and marketing, especially marketers, are learning from everybody out there, and then we have chat GPTs of the world, right, which can easily orchestrate a proper campaign if you tell them how to give them proper prompts, right? So it is, and then there is ABM platforms, which is actually, like, for example, Terminus has a community called Peak, right? I think Shika, you and I know Peak, right? So in Peak, if you go through, there are a lot of templates, there are a lot of playbooks, right, which is practically easy for you to take that and then like implement it and then see some results, right? uh, so yes, I mean, there's a lack of maturity, but then that has actually changed in the last 3-4 years since I started, like, doing this consulting, and then eventually started an agency, right? It was a very uh, from, I would say, uh, from a very, I mean, SaaS ecosystem 4 years back was nothing, right? So it has come a long way, right? Marketing especially has come a long way.
It
Uh,
is.
People are moving pipeline driven. Earlier it was only leads and MQL, right? Now people are focusing on generating pipelines as a marketing function, right? For me, I also work in a company where marketing only reports pipeline, right? There's no MQLs, traffic, or whatever, right? End of the day, quarter on quarter, the only metric that matters to everybody in the company is pipeline. Okay, are you able to generate 10 million pipeline for the quarter or 20 million pipeline for the quarter, right? So people are actually moving towards that, right? So it is important to, especially when it comes to APM, it is very important to understand that you don't need leads. Okay, you need pipeline, right? And then that level of maturity, when you have that level of maturity, it's comparatively easy because you'll have to have patience to do that, patience and consistent effort again and again to kind of do that, compared to a normal campaign where you generate an MQL and give it to an SDR. They'll cold call people, they'll follow up, and then schedule a meeting, right? Which is a comparatively easy thing to do. Whereas this part,
Exactly, Karthik. And then I think the way we change our terminology, the way we speak, the way we change our song, it has to be all about growth and revenue. I think that time everything else will change. We'll have a better results as well. So before I move to Ajay, so Dan, what we were discussing here was that I wanted to, and of course our audience would also like to hear that how is the situation when you are handling either European clients, EMEA, North American, from that particular region. Do you see an advanced level of maturity from your clients when you're talking about ABM and when you're also talking about, bringing in the personalization aspect? Or you are also seeing a similar scenario, what Karthik and Sunesh had just.
Oh, I see a lot of similarities in what you guys have mentioned as to, like, in our markets, and I think you hit the nail on its head to talk about maturity. And I would even go further back. I wouldn't just be talking about ABM maturity. I would be talking about maturity in terms of marketing or go-to-market as a whole, because a lot of times, especially with smaller companies, what you have is the view of what marketing should be doing is very outdated. So if you go to traditional companies in the B2B landscape, what you'll see is that, hey, you go to a founder and ask them, hey, so are you building a marketing team? And yeah, so what is their job? What do you expect of your marketing team? And they'll say, do events, do pretty stuff, make the website look good. Let's have white papers, SEO optimize the website, and yeah, maybe get some leads. And when you have ABM people and more mature B2B people sit down and talk about marketing, like, all that is table stakes. That's like 10% of the stuff that we're supposed to be doing. And then there's the 90%, which is building pipeline, building value, generating demand. And so the maturity question comes up a lot earlier, and it's, what is marketing's role? And you can even take it a step further, because I think when marketing is mature, you should be talking about not just like marketing as a separate function, but as a revenue function, and marketing being embedded into revenue function and being like intertwined sales, customer success, and product. And this conversation is relatively hard to have in software development companies, in traditional consulting companies, in manufacturing companies, in SaaS companies below a certain size, or with a founder who is not quite as experienced or educated yet in this area. This conversation is a lot easier to have in larger companies where there is already a marketing team who are competing and who, unless they adopt this approach, this mindset, this frame of thinking, they'd be dead. So because they adopted this thinking, they are they are alive and well and building their companies. But I think this is like a big step in thinking and mindset and understanding that has to be overcome when you go from being a sort of company that barely exists and makes less than $1 million, euros, or whatever money per year. If you want to break that ceiling and if you want to go from 1 million to 10 or from 2 million to 10, I think you have to break this ceiling. And the ceiling is becoming lower and lower because of what we just talked about, you know, how buyer behavior is changing and how everything is changing that refers to how people buy technology products. This barrier is getting lower and lower.
Yep. And I think by this approach, you can also avoid the value of debt, right? The classic value of debt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is one of, there are so many valleys of debt in so many areas, but yeah, in go-to-market, I think this is one of those. This is one of those valleys of debt. So when you have a young company and you can just do it all with outbound initially, and up to a point, you can just have 5 people go out and try to open doors. But after a while, as you become more mature, as you're compared to more mature solutions, as you're supposed to be more, and as you're going up market, then you're going to need to have the tidal wave that good marketing can bring, proper marketing can bring. And unless you can build that out, yes, you're screwed.
Yes. And Ajay, bringing to you, and then of course, herein we were talking about the ABM concept. You, of course, you know, how I see this entire flow when we are talking about the strategy, when we are talking about the execution, and when we are bringing the personalized concept of loyalty, the rewards, the entire program out there. Share your experiences wherein how hard it was for you probably when you had started this concept, and how easy it is for you now to probably position this concept that yes, it does have value, and if it's done right, you're going to reap benefits out of that. Okay, the classic case of mute. Hang on, let me just...
Sorry, I think I got muted. I didn't realize I was on mute. I apologize. No, I was saying I feel a little out of place in this conversation, right? Because here we have Karthik and Sonesh talking about how you're going to get a girl to go out on a date, which is the first sale. We got Diane talking about, okay, how do we convert that date into an engagement, ABN? And you got me talking about how do you remain married for 30 years, which is loyalty, right? So we're all at completely different points, in the spectrum. So to my mind, for example, if you take the data task, right, and you think about the data task, now where I'm hearing Sunesh and Karthik come from is, hey, I need to identify my prospects, right? Where I'm hearing Dan come from is I need to figure out where this guy is in the ABM process, and I need to treat that person accordingly, right? I'm putting words into your mouth, but that's what I was hearing. I was trying to take out here. And where I'm coming from is a little different. So what I'm going to do is Shikha, I'm not going to answer your question for a moment. I'm going to answer it slightly the long way around, right? By giving you 3 examples of loyalty in an ABM context, right? The first is the hospitality industry. Now, we launched what I think was the first B2B loyalty program about 35 years ago for bookers. Now, in hospitality, there are 3 people who matter. There's the boss in the company who decides how much I'm going to spend in the hotel room night, right? There's the guy who travels, and there's the person who makes the booking, right? Now, the guy who travels, you have your FFP equivalent, you got your Marriott rewards, etc., right? And you rack up points, Taj in a circle, whatever, right? For the company, you have a corporate rate, and you do the kind of stuff that Karthik and Sunesh were talking about until you build them in, and then you have a mapping of the account, and you figure out who's got to call and who to keep them happy, and what's the maximum rate I can get, etc., etc., etc. All that good stuff happens. For the booker, finally, the rubber hits the road when she says the room wasn't available in that hotel. How do you make sure she doesn't say that, right? You need to make sure that, and so you create a Booker program. Now, these Booker programs were incredibly successful because, it was really, it's really a bribe, like any loyalty program is, where we'd give you a kickback on the amount of room nights you gave us. But it was a little bit more than that. We did an emotional dimension of sending you a cake on your birthday, right? Now, this is 35 years ago, and it was a big deal. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when we started looking at these programs again, we realized that that poor booker was getting about 15 cakes on her birthday from every hospitality company there was, saying, you really matter to us. And she's distributing the cakes on her birthday to whoever went by, So suddenly it doesn't matter anymore, right? What do you do in that situation? You change your loyalty program, you continue to give the cake, but not on her birthday, on her kid's birthday. You follow? Now, what do you need by way of database? You need the booker name, you need the kid's name, and you need the kid's birthday. You follow what I'm trying to get at? When you're getting married, it's somewhat different from when you're dating. When you're dating, you're just going to impress the girl very superficially. When you want to stay married for 30 years, it's a different ball game altogether, right? Let me give you another example. This one, the Booker program was still about points and, getting some goodies and all that stuff. Let me give you the Lloyd shipping example. Lloyd shipping, as you know, is where millionaires go to lose their money, right? Because they put it, well, not really. I mean, they make a lot of money out of Lloyd shipping, where they provide the insurance. The Lloyd shipping's loyalty program was a biannual party, right? It was on private island. Now, the people who own shipping companies, by and large, own their own private islands. They don't need your private island, right? So why did this make a difference? Every 2 years, everybody who's anybody in shipping would show up at the Lloyd's party, and they'd stay for 3 days, which meant if I wanted to meet my friend Dan, without people knowing about it, talking about it, the newspaper figuring it out, and saying, oh, these guys are planning a merger, or, they're trying to do a swap deal, or whatever it was, it's the only way to make it happen. So the loyalty program in that B2B context was about connections and providing discrete abilities to have conversations, which was quite a big deal in those days. Right, still is. But, that gives you an idea of a second loyalty program. Let me give you a third, which is the American Express SME program in the US, right? The deal is very simple. Amex would do very little on their own. The SMEs would give offers to other SMEs on the Amex network. And you had an SME Amex portal, and you'd be able to go in. And let's say Karthik was selling B2B services where he's going to help you with your marketing, and Suresh was saying, I'll be a fractional CMO. They'd list themselves there and say, if you're an Amex SME, I'll give you a deal which I wouldn't give to somebody else. So my rate outside is 100 and in here is 95 or whatever, right? And of course, because, and there were many ways in which Amex would make it up to you as an SME, because all kinds of benefits which happen, right? So what I'm trying to get at is that these programs are somewhat different from scrabbling around trying to find leads or taking that lead and converting it or creating an ABM strategy at the initial level, right? So which is why it's been a little out of place in the conversation. So Shikha, to answer your question, is it easier now? No, right? The problems with data remain. The problems with thinking remain, right? Is it easier now in terms of saying that there's so many more people you can talk to? Yes. Your databases have grown. I'll give you a sense of it. The very first B2B database I had was really just 8,000 people, right? And there were just 300 companies in that database. In India, 35 years ago, there were only 300 companies that mattered. Today, okay, we're dealing with 300,000 companies, right? And maybe 10,000 that matter. But fortunately, hard disk sizes have grown, processing powers have grown, so it becomes a little quicker and a little easier, right? But it still remains. I'll give you a simple example to the points that Karthik and Suresh were making about data in a company. Many years ago, I ran an ABM for GE globally, right? And it was very interesting. They had customers, and the question was, how do you, and I'm going to use GE themselves as an example, how do you know that GE lighting in Plainsville, New York, right, is the same GE as GE corporate finance in, Albuquerque, right? Now, you need to create a mapping of the company. So there was a 17-layered mapping on the scale. So the mothership and then all the subs below and the people in each sub. Now, how do you fill that database? Today, you throw LinkedIn at it and you'd figure that out. It's a lot easier. In the old days, we used telemarketers to call and populate that. and then use the telemarketing call to find a reason for them to want to hear from us. So the telemarketing call with, I really want to check your name and address and your phone number and your email address. In those days, emails did exist. Antediluvian, but not that antediluvian. And what do you want to send me? I mean, what do you want to do? Oh, and we'd love to send you a small token of our affection. And, we'd send them a $10 book card or a packet of tea, to Karthik's example, right? And so it's pretty much the same thinking. The only thing was, I think patience was greater, right? Now, when you're looking at the VC-funded startup community in India, which functions quarter to quarter. Actually, what am I talking about? The largest companies in India function quarter to quarter. Nobody's patient anymore, right? You need to have the results and you need them now. I think the analyst reports have changed the way people look at, relationships and building them over time. So you had a little bit more time. So you could take, 6 months to put together a database and another 6 months to warm it up and another 6 months to get some results. Now I think you've lost that luxury. You've got 6 days if you're lucky, right? More like 6 hours if you're not. So granted that, I think now what happens is that fortunately your tools allow you, and it's not really about the ABM tool you use or the marketing tool you use, it's the thinking behind that, which allows you to do things at scale and faster. So that is easier, Shikhar. But the rest, I think it's still a hard grind. As you heard Karthik and Sumesh say, it's not easy getting the first, girl to the dance, right? As Dan was saying, you got her once, but now to get her to come back again and again, that's not easy. Right? And if you think it's easy to remain married, let me tell you,
Oh my God, I love the analogy, Ajay, which you just mentioned. And then, of course, if I'm, there is this hidden gem in this entire piece of nugget which you have said. And I'm so glad this entire session will be available on demand as well. It's live, and of course, it's recorded as well. The retention part, that's the underlying theme, that how you are making sure that through this genuine efforts, you are retaining that particular relationship. I'm avoiding the word customer or prospect or, account here, but how you're retaining that relationship built on the trust.
Sorry, just cut in for a minute, Shikhar, just for a minute. I'm really sorry. I found it really interesting that both Karthik and Sunesh spoke only about net new logos, right? And they didn't say the CEO is asking, because that's the CEO's job, it's not theirs, what percentage of my revenue is retained revenue, which is month on month. I keep getting that again and again. And if you're doing a great job, Sunesh and Karthik, my percentage should be great. If I'm doing a good job and you're doing good, it should be growing, right?
Yeah.
All they're looking at net new logos, and that tells me a lot, right? It's interesting. I'm sure they do look at beyond that.
Yeah, I agree. So the reason behind that is because as a marketer, I think the responsibility is to kind of only generate. It's a CEO's responsibility, like you said, right? Doesn't fall under. It mostly goes to CS or sales guys, maybe account managers, right? So I only spoke from the marketing side of it, but you're absolutely right. I think a lot of the high growth SaaS companies, at least 40-50% of their existing revenue is from NRR, right? Because that's the most important metric, because otherwise you will never grow, right? If you're not retaining and growing customers, right, you have to acquire everything from scratch, right? So it is marketing and sales like huge problem and headache, right? So I think because that's the reason I think when we look at numbers as only pipeline and leads, right? And that's the point of view from a marketing side of it, right? I think as a CEO, when it comes to designing. So, but when it comes to loyalty, right, I have the other side of it as well. A lot of the PLG companies that I'm part of, like when we do PLG, it's pretty important to engage gamify, because it is completely based on some of those products are usage based. Some of the products that I've worked on works on referrals, right? Bringing new customers through loyalty programs through referrals, right? So I've gamified some of them, and also that's where I've used loyalty when it even comes to giving them credits or giving them usage based credits, or in some places giving them extra features or extra couple of months of free usage, or adding adding couple of months on a yearly contract, right? So all of those things come into a picture when you are actually doing a PLG product led model when it comes to B2B SaaS. But you're absolutely right. I think it's very important to think about NRR and then loyalty for retaining existing clients. And in some places, like I said, for an account to crack bigger accounts, which is in multiple countries, it's also important to figure out an existing ambassador who can help you give references, and some of them do, and then lot of it also you have to figure out doing either loyalty or figuring out some form of retention or some form of like I said, relationship exercise, right? Customer events, right? So that's probably pretty interesting to look at. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, we mostly look at ABM from the acquisition point of view, and that's why the retention didn't come into. I didn't talk about retention.
Karthik,
Can I add something to it?
interesting.
Yeah,
Sorry, please go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to add over here, see, one of the biggest challenges which we face, and I'm assuming that that's something which is a challenge for ABM across the globe, is aligning sales and marketing teams, right? And ABX as a concept is taking it one step ahead, wherein sales, marketing, and customer service align themselves. Okay, and that's where Ajay's point about retention, and because when we're talking about retention, we need to, as marketer, understand what's going on in that account. We need to understand what are the commitments made by the sales guy and what they've been fulfilled by the customer success, or so on and so forth. So it's a one view thing which we need to understand as a whole, which is what unfortunately is missing in most cases, even in the probably in the largest of companies, because there is no one view of an account, unfortunately. So and plus a lot of people for marketers specifically, the only way we can understand about an account is when we log into a CRM and understand more about what's happening. And a lot of times the CRM systems themselves are not filled properly by the sales and customer success teams. So there is no way a complete view is possible, which is what hampers marketing efforts, especially when we're doing a one-to-one campaign. So these are few things which I've observed, and I've spoken to multiple people, working in larger organizations as well, which is what hampers the implementation of an ABM strategy. I tried to do it myself, for a small, for a client of mine, which is in the B2B SaaS space, which was, I would have thought that would have been easier because, it was a small company, hierarchies were less, and the challenge was that even there I couldn't really get the complete picture of that particular client for whom I wanted to kind of develop as customized landing page, customized ebooks, and so on and so forth. So basically that's where I think one of the major challenges lie. I don't know if people kind of Karthik and Ajay, do you resonate with what I?
Sorry, could I just, I just want, sorry to come in, I'm sorry to talk too much, and Dan, I'm going to hand it over to you in a second, but just want to make a couple of comments. One is, maybe call me old-fashioned, but I do believe the role of a marketeer is to own the brand. Now, a brand is the sum of all, let's call it customer perceptions of all customers, one through to end, right? And ownership of that is real marketing responsibility, not so much generating leads. Karthik, I was just challenging what you were saying. And along with the brand, I thought, one of the key things of any marketer would be to own the database. Data is not an IT problem. IT is an enabling mechanism. It's the plumbing. The data is the water. And the purity of the water is a marketing problem. Now, salespeople are not incentivized to get the data correct. In fact, it's the other way around, because their private Rolodex is what gets them the next job, right? So it's not in their interest to fill in the CRM system in many companies, right? Because they see that as giving it to the company as opposed to owning it themselves, right? So to my mind, Sunesh and Karthik, I'm just wondering, is it that I'm old-fashioned, I'm a has-been, I don't understand marketing as it is now, or is it that we should broaden the role of marketing to include brand responsibility? See, finally, your job as a marketer, to my mind, is to give the company a brand that customers want to associate with.
Yeah,
they want to do business with you. Sorry, Dan, would you like to come in? Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, this question blends in with what you started talking about 10 minutes ago, which is retention. Okay, just to answer this question of yours, I think, should marketing's role be broadened to own the brand? I think in most places it already does or is supposed to. And if it doesn't, then things are offbeat. But the other conversation with which you and Karthik had is the question of retention and where is marketing's role in that. Now, yeah, traditionally, marketing's job was viewed as one of filling the pipeline, so the beginning of the funnel. And you're talking about retention, which is for subscription businesses the single most important growth lever and aspect of the business. Because if you're a SaaS company, which is a subscription company, if you're a professional service company serving clients and retainers, you are also functioning as a subscription company, because your profit and your growth is determined by how many times, how many months you can retain that client. So it is the single most important lever of growth. That's why, net retention revenue is considered to be probably the most important metric out there these days that relates to growth. And I don't think where we need to expand marketing's impact or role is exactly this. So what we usually do is we preach something called full life cycle revenue growth mapping, where marketing is not only involved at the beginning of the funnel, where it traditionally has its role, but works with the other functions, sales and customer success, throughout the entire customer life cycle, meaning even once somebody is a customer and once somebody is a customer and is ready for expansion, like marketing does have a role in there and should be working together with customer success and account managers. Because traditionally what's been happening, it's just, okay, account management, they have an account plan, and let's say, okay, company X, they're doing pretty good here, so let's try to upsell them package A and B. Now, if you get marketing involved, marketing, as you said, AJ, they have the data, so they own the data. So they probably have a different perspective on what's working and what's not. Blend that together with what customer success sees, and rather than just going out there in some, random way and asking customer X, hey, do you want to buy A, because that would be very fitting for you at this point, they can devise an offer, maybe even create a mini campaign, and in an account targeted way, go to the appropriate accounts. So then you have marketing not only caught up at the beginning of the funnel in the awareness stage, but also taking part in the most important growth lever, which is the repeat purchase, which is the retention.
Exactly.
And superpowers back there. I think that's
the key. That's the key. And then, of course, being the host and moderator of today's session, so one of my other responsibility is to, of course, keep a check on the time. Trust me, I would hate to interrupt you, but this has become like a mini masterclass. And then you can say, loved all the important insights which you all have shared, and I'm sure our audience as well. But I think there will be definitely a second and a third part series of this particular topic. And of course, we can't get enough of this subject. That's for sure. But then I think this is also at the crux, right? The key themes which has emerged from this particular topic is definitely, one is on the retention part. Another one is on the loyalty part. Third part is on the trust part. And then, and again, I think Ajay and Dan, wherein you were talking about the entire lifetime value, and you summed it up nicely, Dan, when you're talking about the full life cycle growth of a particular customer. It's not only about acquiring, but it's, I think, also very important about the retention. And as I think we are hearing it also into various forums as well, that retention is the new acquisition. With this particular theme, right? And then if we tie it back to the loyalty theme, I think it's a very well-oiled machine, or you can say engine, which we can devise. But yeah, I think on these thoughts, of course, this is definitely one of the sessions which is, of course, open-ended. And then because we have got so many perspectives as well. This brings us to an end for today's amazing discussion. What we're going to do is, as I was mentioning, that today we have our networking lounge as well, which is open before the event and after the event. So in case your schedule permits, please feel free to join us at the networking lounge, the virtual networking lounge. We'll give everyone a couple of minutes to go back and refill their glasses or their cups, and then we can join back in the networking lounge. And thank you to all of you, to all the amazing audience as well, for being such an amazing audience throughout the session. And I'm sure you all had your lot of tips and tricks from all the thought leaders. I do have mine. And then after the session, we are going to share a post-event summary. And then I definitely look to see you in our upcoming Eventful Bytes. So thank you and have a good day.
Thank you, Shikha. Thank you all. See you guys.
Bye, everyone.